when he was running for president in 1988. He talked about, like, people are dogging him with questions, and you're Catholic, but now you're saying you're for abortion. And he goes, if someone says that one more time, I'm going to take my rosary and shove it down their throat. This is obviously a guy who was dealing with an absolute monster of Catholic guilt. And you know what? If Catholic guilt is making you feel bad about supporting this, then good. It's doing its job.
All right, welcome back to the Loopcast, Catholic Vote's weekly rundown for all things faith, culture, and politics. As always, it's Tom, Erica, and Josh. And this week, we had an interview not done by the Loopcast, actually with the President of the United States. And no, we did not get President Biden on the Loopcast, although that would be an interesting interview. This one was done by The Daily Show. If you recognize that name, it used to be relevant back when Jon Stewart did it. It's no longer really relevant because Trevor Noah and now guest host Cal Penn did an interview. This interview was actually at the White House. It was with President Biden. It was 20 minutes, and I have to say, on a whole, not very hard-hitting. Cal Penn actually spent some time as an aide in the Obama White House, so he was very friendly, on friendly terms with President Biden. But there was one question and one moment that really stuck out, and I'm going to play it here for all of us to see.
Transgender kids is a really harder thing. What's going on in Florida is, as my mother would say, close to sinful. I mean, it's just terrible what they're doing. It's not like, a kid wakes up one morning and says, I decided I want to become a man, or I want to become a woman, or I want to change. I mean, what are they thinking about here? They're human beings. They love, they have feelings, they have inclinations that are, it just, to me, is, I don't know, it's cruel. And the way we do it is we make sure we pass legislation like we passed on same-sex marriage. You mess with that, you're breaking the law, and you're going to be held accountable.
Josh, you said you had some thoughts on this.
It's very frustrating because it's clear that Joe Biden is 100% in lock with everything about the sexual revolution, including its craziness to the nth degree. That's always been the case, but his whole life career is to give a Catholic blessing on the most outrageous sexual deviancies. And so, on the rare time he actually talks in plain Catholic moral language, he uses it to serve an anti-Christian ideology. And we're not even talking about tax cuts or something like that. We're talking about repulsive sexual stuff, chopping off the parts of children. And again, it's one thing I always, talking about the whole trans thing, especially for kids. It's not like they're saying, look, let these boys dress up like girls. Let's just let them do it. Or let these girls dress up as boys. I wish the left, my goodness, they're allowing these large, multi-million-dollar corporations to make money off of these trans surgeries on kids. It's just like, to me, you're talking about life-altering stuff. And so for him to use the word sinful to describe people who are trying to protect these children, I welcome a strong rebuke from our bishops on this, I hope. But if they don't say it, I will say it. This is absolutely disgusting behavior by a man who claims to be Catholic. I cannot stand it.
Right.
And I'm glad Pope Francis has said a few things about how dangerous this ideology is, but even he could be stronger on this. What they're doing to our children is absolutely despicable, and we need to be louder about it.
Yeah. And it's not the first time that President Biden has used Catholic language to affirm things that are so against the magisterium and teachings of the church. And another really interesting response from another Catholic politician, Governor DeSantis in Florida, actually responded to this specific moment in the interview, not only with words, but also, and this is what I think he's done so well and why I think he's been successful, he showed the surgeries that are being performed on these kids. Really graphic stuff. I can't even really show it over this.
Yeah.
We can link the response, but it's detestable. So Erica, do you have the tweet? What did he say?
Yeah, so DeSantis' response over Twitter, his team tweeted, "It is not sinful to prohibit the mutilation of minors. It is not acceptable for the federal government to mandate that procedures like sex change operations be allowed for kids." And I really appreciated him going straight to the heart of it, this use of the word sinful. Like you said, Josh, this is religious language. This is what it literally means to Catholics. Like, this is an offense against God. And I think for me, what just was so sickening, and again, no surprise coming from Biden. This has happened before. I mean, the guy, he performed a same-sex marriage ceremony, for heaven's sake. Like, this is not a surprise. Not even a surprise from the interviewer. Talk about terrible journalism. It was not journalism. It was not objective. Like, anyone else would have been like, let's define some terms and then actually react to, so what do you mean by they're just children? They have these feelings. What do we mean by, what exactly is Florida doing? And can you actually react to what Florida actually is legislating? No, it's just this general, it's like the don't say gay bill phenomenon. The bill never said don't say gay. There was not a single line in it that said that. But the media just sort of like, Florida's evil. It's this bastion of sin and deception, and Ron DeSantis is Satan. For me, Biden is sort of participating in this anti-religion, this a-Catholicism that's the exact negative and opposite of what the church stands for.
I mean,
and it's just gross.
I think we just wish that if people hated Catholic moral theology, if they really embraced abortion and pornography and mutilating children through these surgeries, they would just have the gumption to say, I'm not Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not asking for too much, but he doesn't. And like you mentioned, like I remember when he was running for president in 1988, he talked about, like, people are dogging him with questions, and you say you're Catholic, but now you're saying you're for abortion. He goes, if someone says that one more time, I'm going to take my rosary and shove it down their throat. This is obviously a guy who is dealing with an absolute monster of Catholic guilt. And you know what? If Catholic guilt is making you feel bad about supporting this, then good. It's doing its job. You shouldn't support killing children in the womb. You shouldn't support, mutilating children. You shouldn't support, all these other horrible things. And I hope you feel guilty about it. And I honestly pray for you, Mr. President, because here's the thing. Why people, you just want the bishops to excommunicate these guys. It's like, I always thought excommunication would be a way of trying to save a soul.
Yeah.
Right.
Ted Kennedy died thinking, I'm
fine.
a Catholic, good standing. I supported homosexuality, pornography, and abortion at every turn. I remain a good Catholic. So, he's going to have an interesting conversation when he meets St. Peter. That's why for Catholic politicians today, Pelosi, Biden, whatnot, we want them to have, I'm glad, Nancy Pelosi's bishop said, this is wrong.
Yeah.
You got to get in right with the church. She wasn't even formally excommunicated, but she said, he said, don't go to receive communion.
It's about the salvation of soul. And I think that's one thing that the DeSantis team response. So I read to you the tweet response. There is a video response, which we have run on the Loop. You can go read it on Catholic Vote's newsfeed. The video response, and like you said, Tom, we can't run it here. But what they did was they just exposed the truth to sunlight, right? That they have Biden doing the interview everyone just heard and saw that Tom played right next to footage of what these surgeries actually do to the human body. And you have to confront it. I could only watch the first half of it because it was so absolutely devastating. But it's like showing pictures of aborted fetuses. At some point, you have to confront what is actually happening. It's why the interview was so disgusting, because it never even considered the children. Just like abortion, it doesn't consider the unborn child and the effect on the child. But the DeSantis team was like, oh, you want to go there? Fine. Here's what we're actually preventing. See the pictures if you can bear to look at them.
Yeah.
So he's confronting, Ron DeSantis is confronting Biden, whereas I think too few of our shepherds are.
Yep.
And so I'm glad that Ron DeSantis is doing it. And I will give a shout out to him, because too often in the past, Republican politicians have been squeamish on all social issues. You know what I mean? Like, so Bill Clinton, right at the end of his term, he gets the abortion drug passed by the FDA through political means. Now we're still fighting that in the courts, which is kind of neat. But and then gay marriage, or so-called gay marriage, that gets pushed, and the Republicans just kind of fold over. Oh, I guess that's done now. It's like, so the fact that Ron DeSantis is actually fighting back, and then lawmakers in Tennessee and all the states are passing laws to protect these children. God bless them. It's nice to see that, Republicans can actually do something other than just cut taxes. Like, oh, we can actually fight for families and save children from this monstrous stuff.
Your favorite line, cut taxes, bomb foreign countries.
Yeah, all they know, I mean, I swear, for 20 years, all they knew how to do was cut taxes and bomb other countries. It's like, maybe we could do something more important, which would be like protecting children, and saving unborn babies.
Yeah, and I have 2 points that come to mind. I think you nailed it with the shepherds need to do something, because Biden has a very public past of lying and utilizing his faith to get political advantages, right? So to even expect him at this point that like, oh, well, he says he's Catholic, so he should live up to these ideals because he says so. If you look at his track record, like, for example, another point in this interview that I didn't show, he said that he had an epiphany that gay marriage should be legal in the 60s when he saw two well-dressed men kiss when he was, I think, a senior in high school. And he himself voted against
his lies
that.
aren't even that creative.
Right. It's like, well, first off, it's a total lie. And then he actually voted in the 90s. A lot of people might remember Bill Clinton signed into law a law that actually made legally marriage between one man and one woman. He voted for that.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't start getting into the pro-abortion stuff and into the pro-gay marriage stuff until like 2008.
Oh, it's a total lie.
So it's anyone who was alive, I mean, I wasn't, but anyone who's alive in the 60s or 70s, like, they know that's a complete lie. And it's a lie against his own faith, which he's now claiming. It's just so, like, we can't even expect him to hold up some type of morality because he's just proven he's so willing to lie, as a lot of politicians are, for advantages and to take advantage of political climates, which he's doing. The problem is that our bishops are not calling him out, right?
Right. All politicians lie, and some more than others. That's true. Although when it comes to professing what Catholicism teaches, this president, just because he says he's Catholic, doesn't get to pontificate and say this is what it means to be Catholic. In fact, it's precisely those lies when the bishops are called to answer even more so. Obviously, I don't expect the bishops to weigh in on every food fight that politicians have. But when someone invokes Catholicism to promote child mutilation, you've got to stand up.
Yeah.
You've got to be loud about it and say, no,
and
absolutely
where
not.
have we seen it? I haven't heard anything yet. I mean, it's still a little fresh, but so that's part of why the lay people are here as well, right? But there needs to be enough of an outcry from actual Catholics who are just like, not only is this unbelievable that he said it, it's blasphemous and wrong, and it's misleading people. There's plenty of people in the comments on Twitter claiming to be Catholic as well, being like, so glad that he said this.
Yeah. What
the Republicans in Florida are doing are cruel. And they are just so unaware of the facts. It's the same thing. And I want to bring up my second point. DeSantis actually had a press conference because a lot of people were accusing him of banning books, of being a book burner, of being someone who's rewriting history, not wanting to show slavery, this and that. I mean, I could read through all the ridiculous accusations.
These arguments are so full of bad faith.
They're bad faith.
It's bad faith.
But the difference with him is he proved their bad faith by calling a press conference about the hoax. And he just read the books that were found in the libraries. And he said, look, this was in a middle school and it had graphic images and writing of sex acts with kids. That's pornographic. That's illegal. That's actually a felony to have in there.
Did you see what happened, though, when he did this press conference? So this
I did,
and
and you got to say it because it just is amazing. It doesn't get better than this.
I mean, so he's reading these books, it's showing the books, and then all of a sudden the live, cameras for broadcasting this press conference, they had to cut away from it because they couldn't air it on their live TV.
Why?
Because they would get in trouble with the Federal Communications
Because it was
Commission.
explicit.
It's like,
explicit content.
Right. So it's not acceptable to broadcast during the day to anyone, but it's okay for, a third grader.
To stumble upon it in their school library. Yeah.
It's crazy. And it's like, if some sweaty 50-year-old man tried to say, I'd like to get Hustler magazine put in this 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 school's library, everyone would be like, "Oh my gosh, creeper dude, you're crazy." And they'd probably call the cops on the guy.
They should.
But if it's an LGBTQ book that's just as nasty and just as profane, then hey, we got to celebrate diversity.
Did we cut to the Twilight Zone like 20 minutes early? Is that what just happened?
No.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, this is going to be the full Twilight Zone episode because basically the LGBTQ movement is becoming the state religion. And there are very religious elements to this, dare I say.
Mhm.
And if you disrespect
Of
this
course,
religion,
did you see what happened in they paint the trans flag on the street
in Florida,
and so this one guy with his truck came by and spun his wheels to smear it, and I figured to myself, that's probably what the modern state would consider blasphemy, because he was desecrating
Well, the coverage suggested
the
that.
real quote unquote American flag, right?
Yeah,
it's
the coverage suggested that. And then if you go over to mainstream media, we have Drew Barrymore on her show having a biological man, Dylan Mulvaney, who claims to be a girl, not a woman, by the way. He's celebrating his girlhood. So he has an odd age trans thing going on, and she actually got on her knees. I mean, I'll put
literally
up the picture.
in prayer and supplication. It was so religious.
Yeah,
it was bizarre,
Yeah.
and it was and everyone, of course, on Twitter was like, "Wow, the patriarchy finally won." You have a woman kneeling before a man, and that's exactly what it was.
Yep.
And everyone's celebrating it. And if you don't celebrate it, guess what? You're a bigot. All these things. So it was a really bizarre week. I think the LGBTQ movement has been unveiled as kind of this state religion in a lot of ways. And I think the way to just fight back against it is, it seems like the DeSantis playbook of just the easiest way to prove an argument's bad faith is to show the reality of what's going on. And how do you argue with exactly what's going on? Don't get in the name calling. Don't get in the slugfest. Just show the truth. And as people said, the truth will set you free. So really bizarre week in this. And Pope Francis, as you mentioned as well, well,
I want to go back just for 1 second, Tom. I think you're right, but it's imperative for political and religious leaders to say that. So that's why it's really great that Ron DeSantis is doing that, and we need bishops to step up and say the same thing too. But the reason why it's important for political and religious leaders to say something is because there are a lot of people who might be, working for a company, and they feel like if they push back on any of this stuff, they'll get either they get fired or they won't get promoted or they'll get shunned. And so it's absolutely imperative for political and religious leaders to stand up and say no to this. And then, we're right there too. We're doing our part to let people know how horrible this is. So, because that's all, I think so much the cultural left has been able to succeed through intimidation. They're the ones who say, they claim that they're against bullying, but in fact, that's absolutely everything that they do. No one's a bigger proponent of this than Father James Martin, who bullies people all the time and pretends like he's the victim.
Yeah.
He's so full of it. But it's absolutely part and parcel what the left does all the time.
Yeah, and I think too, just to end on a note, to the shepherds, I think there's a lot of confusion still among Catholics about this whole idea of inclusivity and shouldn't the Catholic Church be big enough to include President Biden's views and include Father James Martin and include the LGBTQ. And I think, yes, absolutely, the church is inclusive. We do welcome the sinner. That's the whole point of the sacrificial act of Jesus Christ and his passion that we're remembering during Lent. But the point is that Jesus includes sinners and tax collectors in order to transform them. And if there's nothing that the church stands for, we don't kill children, we don't kill the elderly and the sick, we don't mutilate our bodies because we have these feelings that are confused. If we don't stand for that, then what happens is the church ends up being changed into the image of the world, rather than when Jesus welcomed the sinners and tax collectors and included them, they went away changed, right? They were changed by their encounter with him. And that's what the shepherds have to stand strong on, right?
Or they left.
Or they walked away sad. Or they walked away sad like the young man.
Many people walked away sad. Yeah, exactly. Because Jesus challenges his people, say, pick up your cross, follow me. And if that's too much of a burden for you, then they left.
And show me the gospel verse where he was like, wait, come back. I mean, I didn't mean, I'm just going to include you. Show me that Bible verse, Father James Martin.
Yeah, absolutely not. So, yeah, I think it's okay to acknowledge the church welcomes everyone and proposes them with a challenge.
Right.
And if people are unwilling to pick up that challenge, then you can't follow Christ, right? I mean, that's just you saying no.
So I think there's a really great statement here. In a remarkable short time, the radical transgender agenda has swept all before it, rapidly expanding its bureaucratic dominance in government, education, and medicine through a deluge of liberty-constricting regulations. Caught unprepared by this sudden onslaught, Catholic parents, pastors, principals, and administrators need clear, consistent standards to navigate these turbulent societal waters and guide those in their care to safe harbor.
Wow.
And this is a statement that begins, I think every Catholic should read this. It's a statement called "A Body You Prepared for Me." It was written by the Bishop of the Diocese of Baker, Oregon. It is a phenomenal statement.
I'll link it in the show notes.
And every Catholic should read this. Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's, understanding exactly what is going on right now. And what I thought was so good about his statement too is because he's dealing with this difficult question, and there might be parents who are supportive of transgender stuff, and the bishop says, we welcome non-Catholics to participate actively in our parish life, especially in Catholic schools. As experience elsewhere demonstrates, however, open hostility towards this policy and public defiance of church teachings that support it undermine our Catholic identity and contradict our institutional mission. Therefore, students and parents who profess or promote the transgender agenda, in effect, make the choice not to enroll or to withdraw from a Catholic school. The school will respect their decision. They will not be offered admission, or they'll be asked to withdraw if they're already enrolled. I mean, I think that's so well stated. It's like, you got your opinions, but we need to maintain to be a Catholic school.
Wow.
God bless him. Bishop Liam Carey of the Diocese of Baker.
Shout out. Thank you, Bishop.
Yeah.
And I want to say one more thing real quick. Keep it rolling. I have to let my dog in. He's going to freeze outside.
On that
He's
note,
barking. I can hear him now.
nature calls the dog.
Yeah, hey, got to get that dog in. Hey guys, quick break from the episode. A few ways, if you like the Loopcast, to help us out. One, leave us a review, specifically on Apple Podcasts. It helps us a ton. Also on Spotify. Also, you can find every episode of the Loopcast on any podcast platform and also on YouTube. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, leave a comment. It goes a long way as well. And then third, if you really think what we're doing here is worthwhile, please share with a friend. If you have someone you can think of right now who would really like the Loopcast and what we're doing here, send it to them. We're looking to reach as many people as possible, and we really appreciate all the help that you can give us. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the episode. We let the dog back in. We're ready to go here. So we have good news. And after somewhat of a frustrating week with the president, we had some really, I think, just excellent leadership, and another good example of not someone just releasing a press release or something, but a bishop actually getting in the fray here. So Bishop Dolan, Timothy Dolan, he actually wrote an op-ed that was put in the Wall Street Journal. Now, is this an endorsement of the Wall Street Journal? No, dog. That being said, I did think it was a really thought-provoking piece, and I think revealed a lot of people of goodwill's frustrations, I think, with what we were talking about earlier, where the other side talks this rhetoric of kindness and inclusion, and yet there's so much hate and vitriol directed towards certain groups of people with certain beliefs. So he brought up those beliefs in an article entitled, "If You Want Inclusion, I've Got a List." The unborn, the devout, police, and immigrants are all marginalized too. So I'm going to pass this over to someone to go down the list, but I thought it was a really well-written article.
Yeah, this was really fun. And the fact that he put the police as number 3 in the middle of New York, it was actually really smart, right? Because New Yorkers right now are so frustrated with the crime rates and everything. But Dolan just laid it out there. And then he has bullet points, right? Moms and dads in lifelong, life-giving marriage, cherishing a large number of children who are routinely ridiculed and regularly stereotyped as threatening to the planet. I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. I was so happy.
Maybe he should.
And right in,
maybe he should tell that to the Pope.
I
said we're rabbits.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully he read it, right? I don't think he did, but yeah. And then he mentions people who are gay, who identify as homosexual, who are trying their best to live according to biblical teaching, live celibacy. I mean, this was fantastic because something I hear, there are people who feel marginalized who are homosexual, not by choice, but by environment or life or whatever it caused it in them. They're trying to live according to Christ's teaching. And then they get bishops or priests like Father James Martin saying, oh, don't worry about it. All these sacrifices you made to not get married, to not be in sexual relationships, like all that didn't mean anything. But then you have a bishop saying, no, you're seen, and I like to use the left's term, I see you, right?
Yeah.
And we need to acknowledge you and support you in trying to live a life of celibacy and holiness. I was, kudos to Dolan. I know he gets a bad rap from the right and the left, quote unquote. I hate to use those terms, but yeah, for using his platform to get this out there. Well,
I don't know.
Uh-oh.
I'd like to offer a mild dissent because, like, this article for me feels like it was written in 1995 or so. I mean, in other words, coming up with a litany of ways in which the left and their claims for tolerance and not, inclusion are hypocritical, to me just does nothing. I just don't think the left cares about hypocrisy claims. We've called them out for 20, 30 years on all these different hypocrisies, and they just do not care. They care about power. They want to rule our lives, and they've shown it. I mean, they've sicked the FBI after pro-life Catholics. I mean, they're trying to shut us down. Like, oh, you believe in tolerance, why don't you allow us to, homeschool our kids? Like, are you kidding me? Jimmy Carter tried to regulate that. I mean, they've always had a problem with the way we live our lives. And then they've demanded that we not just tolerate their craziness, but that we endorse it and then we champion it. And like every single company in the world has to have a rainbow thing in June. And it's just like, so we're under this onslaught of this left-wing juggernaut. And we're like, hey, you want, you claim tolerance and you're trying to steamroll us. Do you think you can let us, kind of breathe? And it's like,
I don't think he wrote it for them, though.
They just don't care.
So I agree with you. I don't think anyone who is in that world and on the left is going to read this and be like, gosh, he has a point. Maybe I should allow them to breathe a little. I don't think that's the point of op-eds like this. I think it's for the Catholic dad who's riding the train into work, who's just been through DEI training. He's just trying to make a living for his family down in Manhattan. He opens the Wall Street Journal and he sees this, and maybe his day's a little better, right? And maybe that's a weak reason.
Maybe a little better.
But
no,
gosh, it'd be nice if we had a bishop that would make him feel a lot better, but a little better, I guess I'll take.
Can I press you though a little bit here? So are you saying instead of going the inclusion route and bringing up, things like cops or unborn babies, is like, why are we including them? You're saying that we should just have bishops like affirm the truth more, like be a little bit more screw inclusion.
I would prefer that. Yeah. I mean, like, I just don't feel that calling the left out on hypocrisy does really anything anymore.
Because communists don't care about.
For so many years, we thought we could appeal to common sense and show why they were falling short of it. And they have shown themselves not to be good faith arbiters. They're not arguing in good faith. They're not.
Right.
It's not like we're grappling with trying to reach the consensus. They are fundamentally opposed to so much of what we believe in. They reject. I mean, they're rejecting their bodies. Of course, they reject their reality. I mean,
it's hard. It's hard because you
time.
Can't be civil with a group that's proven to be uncivil. Or if you come to a debate trying to win on a set of rules that you have for yourself, and the other side doesn't care about rules, it's like, why are you?
I mean, we're post Kavanaugh, right? Yeah. I mean, this is what happened. I mean, they threw everything in the kitchen sink at it, and it's like I like to tell people, like, a lot of people got radicalized during the Kavanaugh hearings. It's like, this was the third time they went absolutely bananas. I mean, like, have we forgot that they did this with Judge Bork and Clarence Thomas?
Thomas was the
so. I mean, and it was that was we only do it for Supreme Court nominees where we go absolutely banshee and throw everything at the wall. Now they do it all the time. It's for every argument.
Well, and it's in so private companies
these
too.
People need to be defeated.
It's not just politicians in politics. It's also people who are working for large corporations and they're feeling the kitchen sink get thrown at them, or professors at secular universities. They get it thrown at them.
Right.
So I think what Josh is saying,
and the FBI can't shut down Twitter, but they hey, delete these tweets,
Yeah,
and they
right.
do it anyway. It's like you're driving crazy.
So I think
It's
what
like,
Josh is
Erica,
saying,
summarize
We're living in
what
a
Josh.
I think
Yeah.
Josh is saying is he really liked, to segue in a really smooth way, he really liked what the Kenyan bishops did
Oh, yeah.
over on the subcontinent. Right, Josh?
Yeah.
So what did the Kenyan bishops do, Pogo?
Yes.
So the Kenyan bishops continue to be an inspiration to the world. I mean, so much of the church in
This was
Africa
awesome.
is just,
I just
as the kids say, based. I really don't like using that word, but I think that it applies in this. So
Wait, let me make sure before you explain this, Tom. Just help me understand. So I'm sure that the liberal Catholics in the United States probably, I'm guessing, maybe they like the bishops from Africa, right?
I think you're wrong.
I would say no. Yeah.
It was cute, but it's wrong.
I'm going to
Yeah.
go on a limb to say that,
This is
they do
great, though.
not.
they don't like them very much. So there was a Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, and they denounced a ruling by their state Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court allowed LGBTQ groups to register as NGOs, saying that it will lead to the promotion of homosexuality. And according to the Kenyans, they themselves are saying it's against their own moral values, and that
So for those who don't know, NGO is just a non-government organization.
it's nonsense.
so-
Yeah, basically. And
No, I mean, there's good NGOs too. I mean, it's
okay.
when you're talking about international relations, you got the United Nations, you've got all these countries, and then you have NGOs, which are non-government organizations. So that,
Well,
like some are good.
So, but
Some are bad.
speaking of it, the United Nations actually is against. They've come out publicly against what the Kenyans are doing here. So they said that LGBTQ ideology is an attack upon humanity. They actually have said that the bishops criticized the decision, saying that the registration of LGBTQ associations will lead to the promotion of homosexuality, which is against the Constitution and moral values of the people of Kenya. They actually believe themselves, which I mean, I think they have a lot of basis in this, is that the promotion of homosexuality seeks to destroy the family values and Christian dignity of Kenyans. So this is bishops showing leadership and affirming truth, right? I mean, this isn't them saying, oh, well, we want to be inclusive. Please include our little Catholic views here. They're going full-throated. Hey, what you're asking us to promote will destroy life as we know it. And we're not going to stand for it.
And
So
I loved that they didn't do the little, like you said, the little pussyfooting around with like, oh, this is an affront to Catholic beliefs and Catholic values. They're like, no, this is actually an affront, an abomination to humanity. So like Catholics, non-Catholics, it doesn't matter. This
the
destroys
family, right.
the family. It doesn't matter what religion. It's just, this is an affront to human flourishing. So they're defending all of humanity here. They're not just trying to carve out a religious freedom exception for Catholics. They just went full force. So I love that language. I love what they did.
It's because they assume that Catholicism has something to teach
Fancy.
all of us, all
Fancy
humans.
Imagine
that.
What a crazy idea. And it's like, so God bless the Kenyan bishops, but it's not just, I'm not trying to dump on Cardinal Dolan on it. It's just, I feel like what the bishop of the Diocese of Baker in Oregon did such a better job of articulating what it is that we stand for as Catholics, rather than just saying, hey, you guys talk about tolerance, but what about this?
like
those
why
arguments
play in
are
their
over.
terms? Like they're.
I just don't like it.
I agree.
It just doesn't do any good.
I think
Doesn't advance the ball.
you red-pilled me on that one.
Yeah.
So shout out Kenyan bishops. Some really good news coming from there. But we actually now have back in the home front. For some of you may remember, there was a campaign to kind of an expose. I think it was done by the Pillar, where they revealed that there were some Catholic priests specifically on dating apps. One specifically, Grindr, used for homosexual hookups, and it revealed a lot. I mean, in a church that has had sex scandals for sure, not encouraging to see, and I think a really needed expose. And that happened, I think, about a year ago. And then we recently get an article kind of out of nowhere in the Washington Post. And the Washington Post, notoriously not very friendly to Catholics. And they wrote a very interesting article about that event, not in a positive light, saying that it specifically was targeting the homosexual community, instead of highlighting that priests and definitely shouldn't be engaging in hookup culture as they make a vow of celibacy. So Erica, you did a ton of research on this. I think it's well done. Can you just run us through the original story and then what the Washington Post is trying to do?
Yeah, so this is actually almost 2 years ago at this point. The investigations were going on, and then the story broke in July and August of 2021, and it was The Pillar. So shout out to The Pillar, which is an independent Catholic news outlet, and it published 3 reports using data mined from different apps. They had multiple apps, but most of the data in the actual exposés was from Grindr, which is a hookup app for usually used by homosexual and bisexual male persons, men. And it exposed, you might remember, that the then General Secretary of the USCCB actually resigned because the data showed that he had been using the Grindr app regularly and engaging in hookup culture. Even from within his own office at the USCCB, he was using the app. I mean, it was pretty bad. The second report exposed use in rectories in the Archdiocese of Newark, New Jersey, which is headed by Tobin, Archbishop Tobin. And then their third report actually from within Vatican City itself, and specifically areas within Vatican City where tourists are not allowed. So, it's actually being used by, unfortunately, clergy and or religious in the city. And at the time, the story was huge. It was picked up by all the major secular outlets. The Catholic press picked it all up. And it was definitely a devastating set of reports that brought to light these practices. So what triggered the Washington Post story this week was that their reporters finally identified what was the group that had funded that the Pillar's investigative reporting, funded the purchase of the data. And so they say, okay, it's this group out of Colorado. It's Catholic Laity and Clergy for Renewal. But the way that the Washington Post article painted this effort was what was particularly disgusting. So I'm going to read this and see if you can spot the bias if you're listening in here. All right, here we go. Spot the bias. Kicker.
Already, I'm
Come on,
getting ready
Josh.
for it.
Josh is like
Raring in.
raring to go on this. So, quote, the project's existence reflects a newly empowered American Catholic right wing, sound familiar, FBI, anyone, that sees enforcing its interpretation of church teaching on sexuality and gender as an existential issue for the church that no longer trusts bishops to do so. It is a flip of traditional church power dynamics, with the Colorado lay people in a position to pressure bishops. End quote. And this is really interesting because the head of the project, he wrote a response in First Things. He would not give and I'll link it for everyone in the show notes. You should definitely read his response. He would not give the Washington Post an interview, which I wouldn't do either.
Smart
man. Look,
actually, by the way, the Washington Post asked us at Catholic Vote for comment, and we also said
Pound
nothing
sand
to them.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say what I wanted to say, Tom, but
That's what we wanted to say.
But in his response, he pointed out that the Washington Post, this is the worst journalism, the worst reporting. They fixated on one project that Catholic Laity and Clergy for Renewal did. They characterized it as just obsession with sex. So
Salem witch hunt type
this
stuff.
was one project they did with the Pillar 3 years ago. Here's some other work that this group does, okay? They help bishops to gain insight into the life of the church using modern technology, such as what sorts of church activities draw people to a parish, when and how liturgies are scheduled, why Catholics leave the church, ways Catholics engage across social media, surveying parishioners about liturgical lives and their needs, and developing plans for spiritual formation in seminaries in line with Vatican guidelines. So if you actually look at what this group does, this is the work of the church. They really are trying to use data to support. And one project they did was this expose. So,
well, and you want to know why people leave the church is because bishops in charge of ethics and morality for the country are on Grindr in their office. And I would say that that's an important thing to reveal. Like, what? I know that the trap here is that they want us to talk about the fact that it's homosexual. And then, the Father James Martinson, of course, he tweeted on it, said that people are homophobic and the homophobia and hate in this country is unbelievable, that we would be mad at priests about this. I'm mad that any priests
Mm-hmm.
are on dating apps. Not just any. This isn't just any priest. This guy was in charge of a lot.
Yeah.
as well.
Yes. So I want to echo kind of what you're saying, but I want to take it. So
Take it.
you're right. Martin is a snake. And so anytime like this story broke, or when like a teacher gets fired from a school because they entered into a same-sex quote marriage, and he's like, well, what about all the people who work for schools that have committed adultery? It's like, well, I don't know if they're advertising it. If they are, then, we'll expel them too. But I remember at my parish at one time when the priest was very well loved, I found out that he had an affair. And I just want to let you know, I think everyone can understand this, that the common sentiment amongst the people in the parish was like, oh, thank God it wasn't a woman.
I know.
And you're like, yeah, after decades of all the sex abuse scandal, thank God it wasn't a minor, because no minor can consent to sex, obviously. And yes, it's better that it's a woman than a man, because committing adultery, because you're, as a priest, you've taken a vow of celibacy to, so you're breaking your vow of celibacy, obviously, and you certainly aren't married to the person. So the all sorts of wrong. But yes, I will stand here, and I'm not afraid to say it. Having sex with someone of the same sex is worse. It is worse. Now, that doesn't mean we're saying adultery is okay or breaking your vow of celibacy is okay. We're saying that's all wrong. And no one at my parish was like, oh, well, it's a woman, so therefore, you should continue to have sex with her and do whatever you want. Like, no, he had to leave the priesthood, and he did. And we thought that was bad because it was a lost vocation, and because he had failed. We didn't think, well, why should he have to leave? But so if someone is on one of these apps and he's committing adultery with a woman, he needs to be kicked out. Yes, absolutely. But if it is with a man,
Yeah.
it is worse.
It is.
And it's not phobia, homophobia. I always cracks me up. I'm fearful of gays. Like that. So the word, but what they want to do is they want to make it seem like you have some sort of deep-seated pathological thing, or something in you, like you're afraid of spiders. I'm not afraid of spiders, snakes, or gays. You're crazy talk here. And it's like some of these apps, like Tinder, which is, I guess, for mostly for men and women, I think. That's a hookup site, and then there's others like Match, which presumably people do hookups as well, but it's intended to be a little bit more
they all have their own like
serious
flavor,
and eHarmony or whatever. But then Grindr, Grindr, it's not even a joke. They know what they're about. It's for gay men for hookups. So there's no reason any priest should be on that.
Bingo. And I think what was especially shameful about the article was they went and found a bishop. And would I put it past them to just make up a quote? No. Honestly, at this point, they've lost so much trust with me. But the fact that they got a quote from a bishop saying, well, there's nothing in the catechism about dating apps, so we can't really say, whether or not them being on the app is a problem or against church teaching per se. And it's like,
Oh my gosh.
can we read between the lines here? Everything they're doing is trying to...
Did they find that person on Grindr? Is that how they interviewed him?
Maybe
Give
they
me
blocked
a
the data
break.
too.
Right.
I
And
don't
whether
know.
or not they found an actual bishop or they just made this up, maybe it's like Bishop Amy of the Catholic Church of the Annunciation down in West Haven here. And she's not a freaking bishop, obviously, like she's female. But like whether or not they found a bishop, just the ridiculousness of saying, well, the catechism doesn't mention Grindr, so it's actually not against Catholic teaching. Like just the ridiculousness of that, because
Oh, that's such a good argument too. Because, Jesus never denounced
he
racism,
never
so maybe
said
that's okay,
racism.
right?
Jesus
give me
never
a
said
break.
anything about BLM, so we clearly can't use our judgment to like triangulate and figure out what. It's
Yeah.
just so infantile.
If I only had a brain.
And it's calling upon this this extreme legalism that automatically goes out the window as soon as we say something. Well, the catechism does say that sodomy is a disorder. Well, the catechism, we won't listen to it on that, but it doesn't say anything about Grindr, right? So like it's just so.
Which is why don't try to call them
Yeah.
out for hypocrisy.
They don't
Right, they don't
care.
care.
They don't
Right.
care.
They
Yeah,
don't care. They've shown
I
that they
know.
don't care. They use all these lies, subtleties, and nuance to try to massage teaching, to endorse all their kind of baloney. But then when we catch them, like a deer in headlights, they're like, wait, what? It never said anything. Just give me a break.
Yeah. There's another
You got to understand that these
Yeah.
people are snakes.
There's another group of people that were big on legalism, and I think they were called the Pharisees. And I don't think they got a real good edit within the Bible. But that also leads, one group, and I would consider the Washington Post, Father James Martin, Outreach Ministries, ELK, as very subtle, nuanced, and I want to compliment them. It is clever and cunning in a way to achieve their means. There's another group of people that are a little bit more head-on. So the German bishops, they actually, in a 5-page document, they voted to bless ceremonies for couples who love each other, same-sex marriages. 176 votes for, 14 against, and then 12 withheld. And I actually, when I saw this news, and some people pointed out on our Slack here, I bet it's frustrating for the Jesuit types who are really trying to just subtly take away and peel back, and so that they can remake the church into their image, to see someone so head on, just be like, nope, we're going to bless it, and we're going to actively flout Pope Francis, who has said that you can't do this. So it's like, we're just going to go full schism here. And it's like, guys, like, I imagine they're just in the room, like, on the phone, like, guys, like, we've tried so
Yeah,
much
yeah.
with the playbook. Stick to the
The
plan.
Germans were just like, we're going to go full Attila-the-Hun on this one. And just, we're tired of waiting around and being subtle, Father James Martin. We're just going to go out there. And
We're going for it.
So just to clarify for the listeners,
Yeah.
we're in the final days of the German Synodal way, synodal being some kind of new word that makes me think of like swollen lymph nodes and illness, but I don't know, synodal. And so they voted indeed to, right? Doesn't it sound gross? So yeah, Francis has said, obviously, like, we can't bless same-sex marriages. The Vatican, it just issued this document a year ago responding to questions. But then Francis also said, well, it's up to local bishops to decide how to do this. So the local bishops of Germany said, fine, we will. 176 of us will say, yeah, we're going to do blessing ceremonies for same-sex couples. They also have decided to normalize lay preaching of the homily. They've asked to admit women to sacramental ordination, and to ask Rome to re-examine again the discipline of priestly celibacy, which is a whole nother can of worms. Maybe we'll have to go into that another one, but.
Yeah, but you're right, though. I mean, Father James Martin and all the lefty Catholics in the United States want to water down Catholic teaching, obscure things, confuse people, and
empty the
get everyone
pews.
twisted around. And of course, Germans just kind of blunt. They did their little synodal blitzkrieg
By
here.
nature.
Oh, that's terrible.
And so I think they upset a lot of Grindr Catholics in the United States because we were just
Guys.
wanting a little bit more subtlety.
Stop blowing our cover.
Seriously. So yeah, frustrating news coming out of there. And I would love to see a response as strong as Pope Francis has been against the traditional Latin Mass against these German bishops, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah, it's like,
So another story we had this week. I mean, man,
What a week.
full
I know.
week.
Keep going.
So I'd like to posit this thread here to all the people in America who said there aren't people that celebrate abortion. That abortion is just something that people have to do, and it's terrible, and everyone feels bad about doing it, but it needs to be available. There's no one who would just outwardly celebrate it. So there's a tweet.
right. No one's
Oh,
pro-abortion.
my
They're
goodness.
just pro-choice, right? That's
Come
what they
spend
always
an
say.
afternoon with me.
Lies, lies.
I see a tweet.
Tell me, sweet little
Josh,
lies.
man,
No
your music
singing.
career is
We
just,
just-
about to
We
blow
already
up.
posited that. Like, there's just no singing on the podcast.
Yeah. We stay away from that. So anyway, I found an activist. Her name's Jessica Valenti. She put up a tweet. I'm going to throw it up here. So she was upset about a sign in a hospital. This sign is St. Joseph's Medical Center promotes the dignity of human life from the moment of conception until death. Therefore, abortion is not performed here. It sounds like it's pretty much out of the Baltimore Catechism. And so she said, this will be in my newsletter this afternoon, another newsletter to read. But I had to vent about it now. A reader sent me this picture of a sign that prominently displayed as you walk into the labor and delivery unit of Dignity Health St. Joseph's Medical Center in Stockton, California. I don't care that it's a Catholic hospital. What's the point of this sign? Do women looking normally rush into labor and delivery ward looking for abortions? Are doctors there confused about what procedures they're meant to perform? Or maybe, just maybe, this sign is meant to be a nasty, condescending, shaming tactic that targets patients in their most vulnerable moments. As a doctor friend of mine said when I texted her the picture, F these people. I'm not going to read that out.
Thank you.
Really and truly, how dare they? Imagine going in to deliver your baby and seeing the sign as a person who has had an abortion. You're about to trust your body, health, and child to an institution gleefully getting in pot shots as you walk through the door.
Who's the one gleefully getting in pot shots here? I mean, Jessica.
Not that I think anyone in the office in this audience is going to go subscribe to her newsletter, but it's called Abortion, Every Day. So yeah. I think that.
Well, I like how she thinks that, we don't need to assert Catholic teaching in Catholic hospitals because, boy, let me tell you, do we?
Yeah. So
actually, there are people in that hospital that not realize it. That's why the sign's probably there.
Well, and I was looking into like California law yesterday, so I covered the story. So I spent my entire afternoon in the world of Jessica Valenti yesterday. And oh my goodness, it was dark.
Terrible.
It was a dark place to go. I subscribed to the newsletter so I could read the article.
Oh no.
Man.
You're pumping her numbers.
Yeah, I was. So
look at what the LOOPcast
does for
team
you.
sacrifices for you, the listener.
I'm here to tell you, if you need someone to pray for during Holy Week, or if you're someone listening and you're sick at home and you need to offer up your suffering, please offer it up for Jessica Valenti. Her podcast, Abortion Every Day, is just devastating. Please pray for her. That being said, the level of vitriol that was aimed at this hospital as a result of her post, and she has over 360,000 followers.
Yeah, she's
got a lot of followers. And the vitriol, I am actually concerned for the medical center's safety, like the people working their safety at this point, because people were like, F them, they should die. These people are horrible. They're an affront to women. If women go there, women will die because you couldn't get an abortion if your life was at risk. And just, I was speaking to I called my lawyer friend in California. So huge shout out. She wishes to remain anonymous, but she commented on what she's seeing here is mostly a confusion of terms and terminology, that the hospital is absolutely within its right, of course, to follow the Catholic Code of Ethics. So St. Joseph's Medical Center follows the Code of Ethics promulgated by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And it very clearly lays out the definition of abortion. And it's simply that abortion directly targets in order to kill the human child who's growing within the woman. It does not forbid intervening in the case of ectopic pregnancies. Catholic medical ethics do not forbid treating the mother when both the mother and child are at risk. The child's going to die. You save the mother. Not everybody.
Because that's not an abortion.
It's not an abortion, right? Like removing a
That's
fallopian tube when you
Right.
know the child will die. That's the principle of double effect. It's completely licit to save the life of the mother. And these medical centers regularly perform that procedure. When it's a very rare occurrence, but when it is, that's what they do. But for the abortion-minded community, for these pro-abortion activists, they lump every possible treatment of a pregnancy, of some issue with pregnancy, under the term abortion. And they'll even code things like removing fallopian tubes is coded abortion on some of these insurance programs. So the lawyer was saying it's just this bad faith unwillingness of pro-abortion activists to actually stop and ask the hospital. Like you could literally just call the hospital and say, what's your definition of abortion? Like, what is it that you're not performing here? And they'll find this very narrow definition. Actually, I just looked it up in the Code of Ethics posted by the hospital. What is abortion not performed here? We don't kill children.
Once again, these activists don't care about
truth,
or science or facts. They only care about
They want abortion. That's all they care about.
She's clearly an abortion advocate. Like she wants more abortions and zealot.
Not advocate.
Yeah,
Zealot.
thank you. Better word.
Is more abortions. Like it's.
And you just,
it's
reading through the comments and kind of following a few rabbit trails, just trying to figure out who these women are and like where they're coming from. Most of them have had abortions, multiple abortions. Many of them now identify in various sexual identities. I mean, just there's so much woundedness. It's that vibe of like they're very desperate and very angry. the studies they post about how Catholic women Catholic hospitals are letting women die on the table. The studies they post are, do not give any credence to the argument that there are vast numbers of women dying in Catholic hospitals because of coat hanger abortions.
Well, I mean, Bernard Nathanson, who was one of the co-founders of NARAL, said they sat around a table, made up the statistics about back alley abortions out of thin air. So they lied to get abortion legalized to begin with. The fact that they would lie to keep it legal,
No
like,
surprise.
is anyone surprised?
But
No.
very dark and
No
very
one's
sad.
surprised.
We need to bring it up here. We need to go into the Twilight Zone, and boy, do I have some humdinger for you guys this
You
week.
thought the show was
So-
wild. Wait till the Twilight Zone
Nah,
hits.
the show goes on. The Twilight Zone is a good one this week. So I have two, but they're
Okay.
quick. So I'm going to go fast here. So my first,
I like this.
my first one is Jen Psaki. St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is coming up. She's a redhead. We got to give her a shout out here. She used to be the press secretary for President Biden and had to leave because that job was so hard. And honestly, I don't even blame her. To defend what's going on there would be hard. So she goes on cable news, and she had to talk about the Silicon Valley Bank going insolvent and getting bailed out. Some people would argue over the term bailout, but I'm going to say bailout. And for all the finance people listening to this, I'd like to hear what you have to think. I've been talking to some of my finance friends, and they got interesting thoughts. It's all kind of besides the point.
They got bailed out.
Okay, thanks, Josh. They got bailed out, and so she had to go on and defend it because she's still running press for Biden, even though she's not doing the job anymore. And she said this bank failure was so important to Joe Biden that he had to get up at 9 a.m. to do a press conference on it. She said, look, he never gets up and does anything at 9 a.m. He's a night owl. So that's how you know, guys. This is important. So I thought the 9 a.m. wake-up call was a real good indicator to the country. Wow, he really cared about this one. Thanks for getting up, doing an early morning call for us, Joe. I appreciate it. And then number two.
Especially after losing an hour,
that was a real
too.
sacrifice,
I mean,
Joe. Thank you. It's got her
So-
back.
Daylight savings.
Yeah,
time.
daylight savings stuff. So number two. So we have we got any Jane Fonda fans in the audience?
No.
I'm sorry to
No.
tell you about this one. So I'm gonna take you guys through my path of self-discovery, and
Awesome.
this clip, of course, just ran social media for an hour, but it was the View ladies. My girl Whoopi. She had on Jane Fonda and another lady, and we're talking about abortion rights. And Jane Fonda, so-called abortion rights, and she was saying, it's been so important to her personally in her career and women in the country to be able to murder their children. She couldn't even imagine that being taken away. And so she was asked, well, what do we do in order to ensure that everyone has the right to do this? And she's like, she said the word murder, and it was very
Everyone
clear.
went
She was
quiet for a
indicating,
second.
we need to, and even like the View ladies were
Right.
kind of like, oh, you didn't really mean that, right?
You can't
She
say
didn't
that.
mean
You can't
that.
don't use
Uh-huh.
that.
You didn't mean that. And she just was like,
She nods her head.
yep,
Yeah.
I 100% mean that. And so I was like, wow, that's a crazy clip. Like Jane Fonda, wasn't she like the workout lady or something? And all of a sudden I see in the comments like Hanoi Jane, Hanoi Jane, Hanoi Jane. I was like, what is Hanoi
Aw,
Jane? Like I've
Pogo,
never
you're
heard
so
of
cute
this.
and little and young. Yeah.
And-
Oh, my young Padawan.
Yeah, and I
runner.
had to do a little Google search. It's like, what is Hanoi Jane? Why is everyone calling her
tell
this?
him.
And I mean, I'll throw up the picture here. I could not believe my eyes when I saw a picture of her next to an anti-aircraft gun from the North Korea.
North
No,
Vietnam.
Sorry, North Vietnam. Once again, showing my age. North Vietnam with the Viet Cong. And she's looking like this, like all like artistic. And oh my gosh, these poor Viet Cong. And we need to stop the war in Vietnam. So I'm just going to pose with the enemy who's been killing Americans. Next, the anti-aircraft gun was used to shoot down American planes. And I just could not believe my eyes.
Yes.
Aw. That was a
So if we had a just country, if we hadn't been too big on making sure we're, being nice to each other,
Mhm.
she should have been arrested. And actually, you could make the case that she should have been
Yeah.
convicted of treason.
and
Yes.
espionage, like all of it.
Yes. Could you imagine today?
Maybe would have been saved all those stupid workout videos and cries for murder.
Josh, what do you got?
Well, I got the chance to go to the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast again, and I love going there. It's now 18 years they've been doing it. And, they're always really good about praying for the marginalized. And it was really nice. We're praying for Jimmy Lai. He's a businessman in China who's tried to really promote the faith in Hong Kong, and he's imprisoned by the communist Chinese. And so, we all prayed for him. We prayed for Bishop Rolando Alvarez from Nicaragua, who's sentenced to 20 plus years in jail. And as we're praying for them, praying for these Christians who are persecuted around the world, I couldn't help but feel a Twilight Zone moment, because I'm sitting at the table, and who's there with me but pro-life hero Mark Houck. We invited him to sit at our table for Catholic Vote got a table, and he's there with his wonderful wife. And I'm sitting there. It just kind of amazes me. He could have been spending the next 11 years of his life in prison because the Justice Department, the Biden Justice Department, wanted to make sure to send a message to the abortion lobby that they're serious about cracking down. And because this guy, shoved this obnoxious so-called abortion clinic access guy away from his kid, he protected his boy. He almost got 11 years in jail, in prison. And so it struck me that moment. Like, here I am. I'm praying for persecuted Christians in Nicaragua and in China and right here in my own country. In fact, this man right here is facing persecution from my government we have such a rich tradition of religious freedom. It's in the First Amendment. And anyone talks about the First Amendment, I'm like, oh, you mean religious freedom, right? That's you meant the other part of the First Amendment. Oh, I keep forgetting free speech is in there. I'm so focused on, religious freedom. I forgot. Yeah. So a shout out to Mark and Ryan Marie Houck. Amazing witness. And it was an honor to be with him.
Good thing you didn't take that plea deal.
Yeah. Would have missed the breakfast.
Ryan Marie said, if you take that plea deal, you're not coming home. I'm not taking you back.
I'm a huge fan of Ryan Marie Houck. Shout out to her.
Yeah, he'd be serving in jail, and we'd still have her at the breakfast because she stood her ground, right? Yeah. No.
Awesome. Shout out to them. All right, Erica, you got
all right, so coming
week.
Down on free speech here, we have First Amendment rights, etc. So this one really spoke to me. I pulled it out. We have Stanford Law School. This weekend, the Federalist Society chapter at Stanford had invited a judge, and his name is Kyle Duncan. He is a devout Catholic, although that is tangential to the story in a way. He's served at the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, friends of ours. Becket Fund is wonderful, really highly credentialed. He is a judge at he's an appellate judge, and just all around really accomplished lawyer and judge. So great guy, invited by the Federalist Society. So the word got out around Stanford, and what's becoming clear now is that the Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Associate Dean Tyrion Steinbeck, actually helped to foment this heckler protest that was brought up. So the video for this is just astonishing. The judge never actually got to deliver his remarks, but what did happen was he was introduced, he stood up, he was heckled so badly. The Associate Dean Steinbeck, who was at the event, she then stands up and delivers prepared remarks about the importance of inclusivity and welcoming. She informed the judge. She got the students calmed down. This was clearly staged. She gets all the students calmed down enough for her to give her remarks, in which she lectures the judge about how welcoming Stanford is, in spite of the fact that he is a threat. He is a threat to women, to LGBTQ. His remarks will be offensive. His remarks will hurt people of color. I mean, she just stands there and lectures him. It is astonishing rudeness.
Well, the best part about it was that he asked for an administrator, knowing that she would. So they basically set the students up and told them to be super unruly to make him ask for an administrator to be like, you invited me to speak here and I can't speak. And he's like, okay, could I get an administrator to
calm down the students and like
enforce some type of civility? And she's like, oh, I'm an administrator. Here I am.
She pulls out her speech and starts giving it to him. This is also interesting.
It was a 10-minute
speech. So he knew
Yeah.
going into this that it could get a little bit hairy because there'd been social media flurry.
It's Stanford.
Protesting
that
him.
always happens.
He told
with
Rod
communists on
Dreher, he did an
campus.
interview with Rod Dreher, which everyone should go read. I will link that too. And he tells Rod Dreher, he walked into the event and an older man came up to him and said, I am a retired Texas marshal. I came here today to help defend you. And there was another former U.S. Marshal there, 2 retired guys who showed up just in case. And he said, if you ever feel unsafe during this event, assuming things are going to be thrown at you, people are going to charge you, just tap your head and we'll walk in, we'll get you out of there physically. He never actually felt that he was in physical danger. But the reality is this is something that, Stanford, it reminds me of a year ago that almost the same thing happened at Yale University here in my hometown. And the idea, this is everything that is the opposite of what people preparing to be the best in the legal profession. They are preparing to be Supreme Court justices, presidents,
This is a future,
senators.
yeah. It's future.
They're the supposed future of the United States. The idea that they can't even bear to listen to a measured, prepared speech that they disagree
An
with.
accomplished
judge. They can't even bear to listen to it, that he shouldn't have a voice is very frightening.
Ask yourself this, Erica. I got a question for you. So if Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Jackson Brown were not currently actually on the Supreme Court, but they were in attendance, would they have stood up for Judge Cal Duncan
I tremble
to
to speculate, Josh. I'm not going to speculate. I would hope so, but based on their rulings,
maybe
I
he'll be
don't
able
think
to
so.
ask those two because maybe Kyle will be able to ask those two because I figure by now Kyle Duncan has risen near the top of the list for the next Republican president to choose a Supreme Court nominee. I mean, they pull these shenanigans and that's what's going to happen. People remember, like, what happened? Dianne Feinstein starts attacking Amy Barrett, because the dogma lives in you.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, okay, maybe we'll put her on the Supreme Court.
So I actually got kind of deep in that story too, because it's just so intriguing to me, and it gets juicier too. So after that prepared remarks, nonsense speech, she basically was like, all right, and now this is the part of the protest where some people walk out and then some people stay to make him uncomfortable. And so as people were walking out, they were hurling things at him, like calling him scum, saying that he's like a murderer, essentially. Like the word scum was used a few times, and he, to his credit, totally maintained composure. And then at the end of it, there's someone in the back.
Good for him, but I would have let him have
someone
it.
was holding up an upside down Trans Lives Matter sign, and he's like, your sign's upside down. Like, he's just like, these people are so dumb. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, he gives his remarks.
He doesn't give his remarks. He didn't get to.
Or sorry, he didn't get to give his remarks. But then the next day, the person who was like a higher up at Stanford, they were mad. These students were mad this was even allowed to happen. And so they all dressed in black and created a human chain between her office and the door
to her classroom
as an intimidation
right. Well, she
tactic.
had issued. It was actually the dean who issued an apology, a formal apology to Judge Duncan. She issues an apology, and it wasn't like, blaming the student. It was just saying, we're sorry this happened, blah, blah. It was very vanilla. So she gets this silent treatment. Like you said, the students all line up in black with masks over their face and stare silently at her as she walks from her classroom back to her office. And there were like 5 other students in her class who wouldn't participate in the black stare down lineup. And they followed her out. And the students, you have to read their reaction. They just felt it's chilling, threatened. In this kind of behavior.
That's like academic terrorist behavior.
It is academic terrorism.
And these people are the future of the legal profession, and they're acting like toddlers or like juveniles. Like, this is like stuff people should be kicked out of school for. Like and yet Stanford has no spine. They
I
must
wanted to
endorse
kind
it.
of end with this statement from Judge Duncan himself, and he's talking about his experience here. And it's a little long, so just bear with me. But I think that he nails, as the person who was there being targeted, what happened. And he admits, at some point during the talk, I just gave up and started trying to respond to the invective. And yes, I was angry. Sometimes anger is justified. Sometimes it is the appropriate response. So I angrily told those jeering, howling students that what they were doing simply would not work in the courtroom or in the law firm or in a boardroom. They thought this was hilarious. They couldn't care less. And then he says, but what if they're right? What if in 10 or 20 years, this kind of behavior is the norm in the courtroom, the law firm, the boardroom? And I don't necessarily mean loud vulgarity and shouting people down. I mean a situation where power and ideology always trump reasoned debate. And when we reach that place, and I'm assuming we haven't yet, then the rule of law will have turned into barbarism. So from the guy himself, I just thought that was a great summary of what's at stake.
And the left might assume that we won't fight back because the thing I think the left doesn't understand is that we thought we've been having this, reasoned debate and we just had a disagreement. And I think one of the big stories in the last 20, 30 years is how much the left, especially the Christian left, but not just the Christian left, has exploited our natural, inclination for accommodation, wanting to make sure, we live in a diverse country, a pluralistic society, lots of people from different backgrounds. And so they exploit that and they add that little Christian guilt too onto it. And they try to force us into all sorts of, backing down from standing up against evil. And you know what? We're not going to do it anymore. Child dismemberment's bad. Shouting out people at a university, it's bad. And, it's like you keep pushing. Guess what? We're going to snap back.
No, can only push so far. Tell you that much. And that does us for this week's edition of the LOOPcast. Thank you so much for listening. As always, ways you can help the program. First off, share it. Share it with your friends, people that would enjoy the show. It means a lot to us. Leave us a review, specifically on Apple Podcasts. You can leave a written review. That means a lot. Throw us 5 stars, either on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Or you can hit us in the inbox, loopcast@catholicvote.org. I love hearing from you guys. I love interacting with you. I'm going to go check it actually right after this. But we really appreciate you so much. And we love the community that we've built here. Appreciate all the prayers that you say for us. And we will be praying for you as well, especially in this Lent season. And we will see you on the next one. Take care, guys.